Now on Enough Said with KFAN Radio's Dan Barrero.
What do you think, as a former player?
Who even knows who Zen and
Exactly. He barely existed.
Attorney and HoldingCourtPodcast.com's Ron Rosenbaum.
Is this too much democracy now? Are the inmates running the asylum with social media?
Yes. The last time at the Super Bowl, the whole theme was, we embrace the cold. Nobody cares that we embrace the cold. They just want to walk from skyway to skyway.
Have you ever embraced the cold?
Enough Said.
We have to both turn up the heat and turn up the light.
I will urge that the tapes be provided to the family and released to the public as soon as doing so will not jeopardize the Department of Justice's investigation.
So, Mr. Rosenbaum, that I guess is the question. Why have the tape? That's what a lot of people are demanding. Now it's in court, I believe, that why are the tapes that we've heard about so long, even though we don't really know what's in them or how complete they are, have not been released. I have absolutely no problem if they are released. I'm not as adamant about this being a significant issue, largely because eventually they are required by law, as I understand, to be released, whether it's during the course of a trial that would take place or otherwise. So I don't think it's quite as ominous as some other people do for that reason. They can't, whatever tapes they have cannot, by state law, be buried. It's a matter of when they should be released.
Yeah, I mean, it's a matter of when, but if we learn nothing else from Chicago, from Ferguson, the one thing we don't have, Dan, between the police and the community is transparency. Everybody's said, Mike Freeman, all of them, when the investigation is done, we'll release the tapes. The BCA is done with its investigation, assuming that they're smart enough, which they are, to have looked at and already interviewed the eyewitnesses. There's no logical reason not to release them. And when you don't release them, all it does is add to the distrust. For God's sake, they showed Mark Dayton.
Can I read you something?
One of the tapes.
Let me quote. The U.S. Department of Justice Civil Rights Division and the U.S. Attorney told Dayton's office that release of the tapes would compromise their investigation.
Well, it depends when they said that.
That's true.
Yeah, okay, the BCA is done. There's no reason not to.
In
November,
this
kind of thing belongs to the public. You're right. Sooner or later, release them now.
But then it should always belong to the public. If you want to make a steadfast policy that across the board, whether there's folks out in the public who are demanding it, then make it a policy. Chicago, I think it's a flawed analogy, because what happened in Chicago was there was no investigation. It was closed, and the result of that investigation was nothing criminal was going to be filed. The tape became vital there because it opened the door to just how badly it had been mangled in the first place. This is still an active investigation.
By the way, not with the BCA. It's done. But in Chicago, they said, we're investigating. They weren't investigating. They just didn't want the public to have the tapes. There's no downside. The downside in doing it in the beginning, it might influence eyewitness testimony. I got to believe the BCA is smart enough to have done the eyewitness testimony already.
I'm fine.
I mean, there's no downside, but the upside is it's time now. You have to admit, we have a big problem with the police and the community.
We do.
More transparency here with no downside is what to do.
But in the beginning, if you want to go back to November, what was said by the folks in charge was, we want both the investigation to take place and we want the report to be sent for then the prosecutor to take a look at. You can buy it or not buy it, but they're being consistent with what they said. Eventually, we're going to get this information. And I guess, again, if we knew this was going to be put away forever, I would be a lot more bothered, because we still don't have an investigation.
All right, well, we'll agree to disagree. First of all, Mike Freeman shouldn't even be doing this. He's got a built-in conflict of interest. These are police that he rely on. This should either go to some independent group of prosecutors or let the Attorney General do it. Mike Freeman has no business doing
Ron,
this prosecution.
We're going to have to leave it right there. We should know some more next month. Enough said on that topic. Let's move on to the race for the White House. GOP candidates dropping fast. Chris Christie, Carly Fiorina, both dropping out this week after the New Hampshire primary. But Marco Rubio, he's taking heat for his debate last Saturday night. Let's take a listen.
Here's exactly what we're doing. You have not been involved in a consequential decision where you had to be held accountable. You just simply haven't.
Chris, your state got hit by a massive snowstorm 2 weeks ago. You didn't even want to go back. They had to shame you into going back. And then you stayed there for 36 hours, and then he left and came back to campaign. Those are the facts. Here's the bottom line. This notion that Barack Obama doesn't know what he's doing is just not true.
There it is.
He knows exactly what he's doing.
There it is, the memorized 25-second speech.
Well, that's the reason why this campaign is...
You know, there are moments. You remember the Wizard of Oz?
I do. I saw it once or
remember when they
twice.
throw water on the witch? This was Marco
Melting?
Rubio. He was getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Now, you know as well as I do, it's okay to have a bad debate, but if the criticism, what they've been criticizing Obama for from the beginning, he's only a one-term senator. He doesn't know anything. He wasn't ready to be president. Marco Rubio, a one-term senator, he's got to fight that image. So instead of saying that President Obama doesn't know what he's doing, in other words, then I don't know what I'm doing, he has to take the opposite. I think Christie just went all New Jersey on Rubio, and that when the criticism and the destruction that he did goes to your very vulnerability, it may be fatal.
It was devastating, and the best part, once again, for the winner, in a sense, who's Donald Trump, is a guy takes out maybe his top competition, potentially, if it goes that way, if it ends up being as
well, he was on a rocket ship going up,
correct? Right? And the guy who takes him out withdraws. So he does the dirty work, and then he's not really anybody that Trump has to be afraid of either. It was I got to believe they got 1 million handlers. I got to believe the Rubio handlers were going, oh, my God. I mean, because, as you said, it seemed to crystallize the single biggest criticism, and it was total. It was, if it had been a fight, they'd have called it at the end of the first round. Not technical knockout. It was a
knockout.
Oh,
right.
And Christie is also out, too,
well,
because he only had 9% of the vote in New Hampshire.
This is where Christie's bulk hurt him. He threw a hand grenade, but the problem is he's so big that he got blown up with the very same hand grenade. That's the interesting thing.
Now you're doing body shaming.
Well,
you're going to get an email on that.
That's what it was. I watched it. Have you ever seen anything like that debate where it literally was like a computer program where you kept starting it word for word? He did it maybe 5 times.
Well, the other thing is, and it is a fair point, sometimes we're unrealistic in expecting, these guys speak like 8 times a day. How many different ways can they say stuff? So we're not probably realistic in expecting every speech is going to be 100% different.
But
when you go right down that line and you basically, it's the old, Your Honor, I rest my case. I have nothing else I need to say. And the jury is going to very clearly bring in a unanimous verdict. If you're a Rubio fan, and there are a lot of people who thought he was the best shot to dethrone Trump, you've got to be in depression over what took place in that debate.
It was the Goldilocks syndrome, that he wasn't too conservative, he wasn't too liberal, he was right in the middle until this. I don't know. I'm not saying he's done.
Coming up on Enough Said.
The problem with the whole NCAA deal, the people that get punished are not the people who did the wrong deeds, the crime.
Sometimes, but rarely.
Oh, okay, but here you got a situation, what's Patino making?
I made the decision to withhold the men's basketball program from all conference and NCAA postseason competition following the 2015-2016 men's basketball season.
This is a punishment I thought would never happen this season. This is a decision that's as harsh as anything I've seen.
Well, all right, that's Patino. First of all, I don't believe for a minute that he didn't believe it wasn't going to happen.
He was devastated.
Yeah, you believe that, I'll sell you a bridge in Brooklyn. But the problem with the whole NCAA deal, the people that get punished are not the people who did the wrong deeds, the crime.
Sometimes, but rarely.
Oh, okay, but here you got a situation, what's Patino making, $7-8 million?
In that range, probably, with perks.
It's not going to affect him at all. You remember when Pete Carroll was involved in that huge scandal at USC? So all the kids lose eligibility for postseason, whatever. Yeah. Pete Carroll goes on to the Seattle Supersonics and makes millions.
You know
and goes
why?
on his merry way. It's a ridiculous way to punish the wrong people.
Well, part of it is the coaches who are the most effective cheaters find a way to maintain something called plausible deniability.
Correct.
In other words, I can't be, in a court of law sense, directly connected to them, and so they end up skating. They end up, as you say, getting out of Dodge in the case of Pete Carroll. And Rick Pitino is so disingenuous on this because although I think you and I are in agreement on maybe better to punish the coach or the administrators, even if you don't have the direct line, Pitino, if he said, hey, why don't you fine the coach? Go ahead and write the check.
Well,
take half your salary and make a point and say, I'm not going to accept
and what are the
half my
odds
salary.
of that happening?
He knew. He said what he said because he knew it wasn't going to happen. That's the problem.
And you see, why don't they do it the next year and give the kids free pass? If they want to leave the program, they can leave the program. Then the kids don't get punished. You know, let the Patinos and the Pete Carroll. By the way, I don't want to get too personal. Do you believe for a minute sort of a dictatorial coach like Rick Pitino had no idea this was going on?
Rick Pitino knows I think the quote from a friend of mine is the body fat of each and every one of his players. He's that anal. You think he's not going to know that over a period of 4 years, strippers and prostitutes were coming through those doors servicing players on a regular basis? It is insulting to think that that's the case. And that's why, to me, at some point, if you're the university,
so why
how
don't they
impressive would it have been
fire
if the president had said, you know what we'll do? We're gonna suspend you for the rest of the year. We're gonna put in an interim. We're gonna put somebody else.
And your salary along with it.
At least half of it. And
But
even
I mean,
then, he'd still have $4 million.
Okay, enough said. Let's move on to the future of Wild coach Mike Yeo. It's all over social media right now, a bunny calling for him to be fired. Former Wild player Zenon Konopka first tweeting out, I'm not saying Mike Yeo is a bad coach, but change is due in Minnie. #Yeo must go. And then tweeting a picture of his rabbit, his pet rabbit Hoppy, with a sign saying Yeo must go. Is social media driving all of this?
Yeah, it tapped into a level of frustration that's already there about this team, which continues to be in free fall. I got a bit called Run for None related to the Golden Gophers not winning a single Big Ten conference game, their men's basketball. Little did I know it'd also be related to the hockey team post All-Star break. But this is a great lesson in that nobody's going to call. If this is 30 years ago, there's no writer who's calling Zenon Konopka to say, Zenon, what do you think as a former player?
Who even knows there's Zenon
exactly.
Konopka?
He was barely existed. But now, Zenon Konopka, he's not waiting for the call. He calls the hockey world
but then
by
he
tweeting
leads the story.
And leads the story. And you know what? And as many people have said, you know, this guy was just a fringe player.
So
he's not
what?
that good. He got cut. He's bitter. But everybody reported on it. It became the start of a whole new wave of speculation on what? The future of Mike Yeo.
Konopka becomes the managing editor
he's the straw that
for
stirs
the
the drink.
news.
Let me quick interrupt you guys. Yeo did respond to Hoppy. Take a listen to this.
You know what? I really don't care what he says. I will say I was very disappointed to see Hoppy holding that sign.
Well, he's
They
got
go
a
Hoppy,
point.
they go way back,
It's
yeah.
one thing when Konopka calls for you to be canned, but once they get the rabbit, your future
a little bit too
is
much.
clearly going to
Well-
be limited. By the way, is this too much democracy now? Are the inmates running the asylum with social media?
Yes.
You know, you can put something on social media, and everybody has to respond
And you know
to
what
it.
part of this is? The media business is under siege for ways to make money. Newspapers are under siege. The old rules no longer apply. So what's it about now? Clicks. This isn't anything new, but it's true. And so then, even if you don't believe Konopka is worth it, you got to put it in a headline because it's going to get the click. And so you've, in effect, ceded even more control
Could
of a
this
story.
eventually can the prediction become true, the demand become true, simply because of social media? Is it possible Yeo can lose his
Well,
job
he
just
was in
because
trouble.
this starts the firestorm?
He was already in some trouble, and
But-
the longer
but this doesn't
goes,
help.
no, it added a great deal of speculation and got the whole process going again. And
I mean, it is the entertainment business, right?
yeah, it's supposed to be the entertainment business. The Wild have not been
They're not very
entertaining
entertaining.
lately. Though.
Coming up on Enough Said.
Otherwise, why don't we just have permanently up with people so we never offend anybody? And people say the
Up with
Super
people,
Bowl.
underrated.
I know. Well, you've been a
Gloria
fan. I know you
Estefan
have
was
all their
here.
albums,
I do have
right?
all of them. Yeah.
Do they have albums?
They don't have.
Indiana, you mix that Negro with that Creole, make the Texas Bama. I like my baby hand with baby hand and afro.
Well, now this is another controversy. We can't
The
have a
game
Super Bowl.
or the halftime show?
No, it's all controversy. All we have is controversy. This is the
beauty of
halftime
it.
show. It's not a controversy for everybody over 50 because they can't hear. So they didn't hear, including me, by the way.
Apparently see.
There were Black Panther references. There was Malcolm X. There was Black Lives Matter. And people, I didn't hear any of it. I just thought it was a pretty good halftime show.
You just couldn't take your eyes off Beyonce. Let's be honest about it.
But isn't it a point of, you get what you pay for. Well, what did they think they were getting? Beyonce is an entertainer. She's an African-American entertainer. She's got something to say. Otherwise, why don't we just have permanently up with people so we never offend anybody? And people say the Super Bowl...
underrated.
I know. Well, you've been a
Gloria
fan. I know you
Estefan
have
was
all
here.
their albums,
I do
right?
have all of them, yeah.
Do they have albums?
They don't have albums. But, I mean, I was not that offended by it.
Did you hear it even?
I didn't see... I didn't understand even that the uniforms were supposed to be Black Panther chic.
I didn't either.
And you and I are old enough.
Did you see the X for Malcolm X?
No.
I didn't pick up on that either.
I would say if you are trying to make a political statement, make it a little less subtle, and we might have noticed it more. But beyond that, this is, to me, the rubber meets the road on this deal. The people who say, come on, what's the big deal? It's she has a right to an opinion. Who's to say wrong time, wrong place? Well, the litmus test on that is when you disagree with whatever statement's being made. Example would be if they bring out some new Conway Twitty next year, and now I'm profiling country music, and he decides he's going to make some kind of statement pro-Second Amendment. Would the reaction from the people who say this is no big deal today be the same?
Well, it wouldn't. No,
and that's the fraudulence of this.
It's not the problem that this is not the wrong place. It's the idea this is the wrong place for a message I don't like.
I guess I'm still not sure Super Bowl is the best place for any of these messages, but I just would like some
Can they get a bigger American flag, by the way?
Going back to your point that not many people even knew there was a controversy, Jacob Nelson tweeted us at Enough Said. He said, I, like most, had no idea there was a meaning behind it until we were all told that on Monday. A lot of other people saying, not realizing it until they actually saw it on the internet.
Would you remember that horrible moment, maybe the most horrible moment in the history of television, when Justin Timberlake ripped off Janet Jackson? Nobody saw it, okay? And then the next day, once people heard about it, my God, what if my kid would have seen the kid would have turned into a pillar of salt with a microscopic second that
You're saying there's some overreaction that goes on.
Well, I mean, my God, you get what you pay for. In for a dime, in for a dollar. My attitude is, you still don't have a right to be offended in America.
Contract. Maybe there's got to be a contract that says you will not make any sort of political statement. Because the problem
How can you have a singer?
Yeah, then who's left at that point? That's exactly
it. On that note, let's move on to the lightning round. First up, we're going to stay on the Super Bowl. Lady Gaga getting rave reviews for her rendition of the national anthem. She was pretty awesome. But was she the greatest of all time at the Super Bowl? Dan.
Well, at the Super Bowl, I think yes. And it won't be a popular opinion. Because a lot of people, let's face it, they profiled Gaga. This happens to her all the time. And
they don't know
what
a great singer she is.
She can belt out a tune, and she did belt it out. And my sources say she sang it live.
Oh, yeah.
Which is an important part of it.
Wasn't that a criticism of Whitney Houston?
Controversy was whether she actually sang it. And I think the conclusion was she did, but it was
my
she was
favorite
lip-syncing.
rendition of the national anthem was Marvin Gaye at the '83
Now you're showing your age as well.
Well, I can't help it. At least I could hear then.
It's brilliant, but a lot of people today would absolutely despise it because let's just say Marvin made it his own.
Okay, next up. Minnesota is hosting the Super Bowl in 2018. It hasn't been here since 1992. Host committee members went to San Francisco to check things out. One of the ideas they brought back is to give out to fans 3M Post-it notes. Ron, what do you think about that?
Can we ever stop being rubes for 1 minute?
Be nice to your people.
First of all, we shouldn't have the Super Bowl.
Why?
But people
What's wrong
all
with
over the
Super Bowl?
country are saying, I can't wait to come to Minnesota in February because if I do, I'm going to get Post-it notes. That's really exciting. My recommendation, I'd give little thermometers so people can tell their friends, I've been in the coldest place on earth. This is ridiculous. That's thinking out of the box.
Here's where you're right. Here's where you're right. The last time we had the Super Bowl, the whole theme was, we embrace the cold. Nobody cares that we embrace the cold. They just want to have the walk from skyway to skyway.
Have you ever embraced the cold?
I've learned to live with it.
You embrace the cold by going to Hawaii.
Okay, come on, it's not that bad here. U of M President Eric Kaler said before that they weren't going to use a search firm for a new AD, but now they're going back on that, saying now possibility of doing that. Dan, what do you think about that?
It's like a bad onion bit, is what it is. Honestly,
it never ends.
Here's the thing. I don't think the concept of using a firm is the worst idea, but it shouldn't
We
be
haven't had much luck with them
it
so
shouldn't
far.
be your guiding deal. You should come up with the names, and then you know what you use the firms for if you get one that's good? Use them to vet the possibility that, oh, he might want to sext to employees of the university.
Well, how about how well they did vetting Norwood Teague?
That's my point.
Well, they missed a little problem.
But we got no, let's face it, there's no leadership on this. It's
Okay,
comical.
let's keep going. Controversial comment by former Secretary of State Madeleine Albright when she said there is a special place in hell for women who don't help each other. She was referring to women who would vote for Bernie Sanders over Hillary Clinton. Ron.
Well, you remember Madeleine Albright, by the way?
I do.
Making that statement about Sarah Palin. You've got to vote for Sarah Palin because there's a special place in hell. What the idea was,
Unlikely.
Hillary Clinton is what she's talking about. And then Gloria Steinem, the queen of women's liberation, said, I hate to tell you, but men are voting for Sanders because that's where the boys, or women are voting because that's where the boys are. Feminists were up in arms, and she's the queen of feminists.
I hate to say it, but she looked like a dinosaur with those comments. And Bill Maher, to his credit, he called her on and said, if I say something like that,
He's
I'm
right.
getting
Okay,
roasted.
Yeah,
real quick, if you guys didn't know this, it's Valentine's Day on Sunday. Yes.
Uh-oh. Oh,
the
boy.
average person, $512 they're spending. I'm wondering, have you gone shopping and have you made reservations?
Well, you make more
Dan.
money than anybody. What are you buying?
Well, now I feel guilty. 512 on the average? Are you
Well,
anywhere
yeah,
near
but you
that
should
average?
be above average. I'm below average.
Right now, I'm below
I give
average.
a lump of coal. That's
Thank
what
goodness
I
I
give every
still-
day,
what's the
every
day?
Valentine's Day.
It's Sunday, right?
It's
so I still
Sunday.
got time
You
to
see,
come
you
from
didn't
behind
even
here.
know.
No, I try to.
You'll
Well,
pay
know
if
me.
you don't get at least the average.
Believe me, I'm well aware. And I got to buy for the daughter, too. Well, right? That's the way it works.